Arne, nice to speak to you. I mean, I'm sure you're well aware, and you get asked a lot, that Jurgen Klopp was the former manager at Liverpool. But the fact that he was here for 8 years, and the way that team played, and for the players, the system is so ingrained in them. How much of a challenge has that been for you in the pre-season to get your ideas across?
Maybe in pre-season not that difficult, because the ones that were there were not the ones where Jurgen worked with for so many years. And I think it helped that we had some good results over there. Players and also people around us were positive about the way we played. Then when the other ones came back, had quite a long days off, they really bought into it immediately, because they also understood in 2 weeks' time we have to play Ipswich. So, but I think one of the main things why, if they buy in, which is I believe they do, but why they do is that the differences are not that big. So there are only small differences between Jurgen and me, and the general idea of how we want to play football is, I think, quite similar.
What would you class as the biggest difference then between your type of football and Jurgen's, if there is any?
Yeah, I would prefer not to come up with it myself, because now people are going to emphasize on it. But I think, although it's difficult because I saw many Liverpool games, we didn't see all of them. But the way I looked at it was that they used every moment they could to play the ball in behind or deep. That meant that the game was always also sometimes a bit open, especially in the last period of Jurgen. And sometimes I tell them, okay, get a better judgment in risk and reward. So if you can put someone in front of the goalkeeper, please try to do so. If not, it's also a good idea sometimes to keep the ball. But I think if Jurgen was in the room now, he would have told us, yeah, I wanted to keep the ball once in a while as well. But in general, I see that some players are always, too many times in my opinion, try to play the difficult ball, which doesn't get the reward for the risk they take in this ball.
How much of a help was it speaking to Jurgen? I think you mentioned that you spoke to him obviously before he left, and the fact that you'd also looked back a lot of his training sessions as well.
I think both helped, although the best way to get to know the players is when you work with them yourself and you do your own training sessions. But it helped coming in here to understand what it means to the fans, how his relationship was with the players, and the way he worked over here. And it's always nice, if it's Jurgen or whatever manager, it's always nice to see how other managers work, what kind of exercises they do, if you can steal something from that. And so that was also one of the reasons why I watched all these training sessions back, not with the idea to getting to know the players better, but more, okay, what kind of sessions have they done in the past over here?
We go back to last week away at Ipswich. I mean, when you look back at the game, certainly that first half, was that a shock, a surprise, the atmosphere, the quality, the energy from Ipswich, and was that something that maybe you don't see so much in the Eredivisie?
No, that intensity and that atmosphere you mostly saw in our own stadium at Feyenoord, in the Kuip, especially the atmosphere. That we were facing this intensity, that was not a surprise for me. I think if you play a newly promoted team, and I think I'm correct, they promoted 2 times in a row, so there's only positive energy in and around that team. So it was maybe a difficult moment to play them, because I expect maybe in 10 games, if they've lost a few more times, then the energy of the whole stadium is also different. But to play them now, you could expect them to be all on top of it. And we were ready for that, because we didn't concede anything, but we were not ready to create chances. And that is something we have to do much better. That if that intensity comes, if they are playing us 1v1 all over the pitch, we, with the quality we have, should be able to create a few chances. That didn't happen in the first half. Fortunately, we made that up in the second half a lot, because then we arrived many times in their 18-yard box.
Before we got to the second half, you made a change at half-time. There's been a little bit of chat about that since. But is that something we should get used to, you as a manager, that if you see a problem on the pitch, you will be decisive, you will make a change at half-time, or maybe at times even before the break?
I don't think in my managerial career I did it before the break. It's not to say that it can never happen. It's not to say that this is something that's going to be happening all the time, that I make a substitution at half-time. in this moment, I think, I've said it in a press conference this morning as well, at least that's what I thought I said, and I think I said it as well, that Jurel didn't lose all his duels, but he lost a few important ones, and unfortunately for him, he lost a really important one just before half-time. And I said that the whole team lost too many duels, but in my opinion, their only threat in that game was the long ball towards Dilap. And if you then have also Ibu Konate on the bench, then Jurel is able to do this because he did in pre-season really well against United, against Arsenal. But sometimes on a day it doesn't work out for you. Yeah, then there are too many good players on the bench not to use them. So I used it, and we were lucky that the second half was much better, but that had not so much to do with me taking Jurel off. That had a lot to do with the other 10 working a bit harder than they did the first half. So
I'm not sure if you've seen it, but on Monday Night Football, we have a show. We try and look at the tactics, certainly, of a new manager into the Premier League. And we analysed and looked at your setup in the build-up with the back four, in the deep build-up, also on the halfway line, where at times the full-backs are quite narrow.
Yeah.
I mean, can you give us any insight into the thinking behind that?
I heard where you were talking about, so I was well informed before I came here. The idea of the fullbacks not being that wide, and it depends also about the press that the other teams will give us. But if the fullbacks are all down the line and you play the fullback, then he's very far away from some other players. And it takes really long to get the ball over there. So if you are playing closer to each other, then the ball goes faster from one foot to another, and that gives less time to the opponent to defend. The moment you showed, or were you guys spoken about, that was not a good moment where he did so. So we were expecting them to press with 9, and then the 11 would follow to the other centre back. Then to show yourself in the position where Robertson showed himself was a real good idea, because the 2-3-1 is on the opposite side, and you're closer to that situation. That is the downside of working so short with them. Now they press 9 and 10, then it's not a good idea to position yourself over there. So this was not a perfect example of how it should be. He used it in the wrong moment, I would say. But the ideas of fullbacks or players playing close together is to have short passes which give limited time to the other team to defend, and you can switch play faster, of course, than receiving the ball all the way down the line.
We noticed in the second half that they looked a bit wider. Certainly when you look at the first goal, Andy Robertson was on the touchline, and Trent wasn't really too wide. But was that something you spoke to him about, being wider in the second half because of the way Ipswich pressed, and at times it was man-to-man, but also at times it was 4-2-4. There was 4 attackers really up against your back four.
No, I think Trent has been used in the past, and we will use him also during this season a lot on the inside. But the way they pressed was with 9 and 10, and their 11, their left winger went all the way to Ryan Gravenberg. And when we played Trent, then their left midfielder, the number 8, stepped out towards him. Then it's not a smart idea to play on the inside, because then the distance is really short between the midfielder and Trent. So then it's a smarter idea to stay wider, because then the distance for him to run is longer, creates more time for Trent. So we did spoke at halftime that he should be wider, so to make the distance between the one who wanted to press him longer, which creates more time for him. And we want to have him as much as we can on the ball, because you know better than me, although I know quite well already how special he is when he has the ball.
You said how well Trent performed with the ball on Saturday. Obviously Mo Salah was fantastic as well, got the goal, you know, Virgil as well as myself. So, I mean, what would your role be in terms of helping them sign a contract and, you know, to stay at the club in the future? Obviously the hierarchy will deal with the money side of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, the only thing I have to do, what I do with all of them, is getting and bringing the best out of them. And if we bring the best out of them and they perform really well, then it's up to them. If they want to sign, it's up to the club and us if we give them a new contract. But the best thing for all of them is, if you're out of contract or not, is get the best performances possible in. And there is where I should and will help them together with my staff to bring out the best out of them. Until now, it's nothing but positive. Mo came back really strong in terms of physique. Virgil came back really strong. Trent did the same. And they brought in some good performances against Ipswich, which was only the first game, like all the others. But trying to get the best out of them, and then my main focus is on Brentford and not on contract extensions. But we will see how it works out.
Okay. You mentioned Brentford, and it's your first competitive game at Anfield. I just wanted to ask you how important you feel the Anfield factor and the atmosphere at Anfield will help the success of your teams, because you had great success at Feyenoord, and that was probably helped by the atmosphere in the Kuip. I mean, is that going to be a real partnership going forward in helping your teams get to where you want to?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things you want as a manager, that the fans love to see your team play. And if the fans see that we play a style that they like to see, then they will be much more positive. And if they are really positive, that will help the team a lot, of course, as well. But normally at most clubs, and you know better than me if Liverpool is an exception to this, but normally it starts off with the players putting in a lot of work rate and being real intense, and then the fans go behind it. Sometimes you see the opposite way, that it starts with the fans and then the players come. How is that at Liverpool, in your opinion?
I think a bit of both. I think on the big European nights, the supporters will get the players going. I think week in, week out in the Premier League, it maybe flips a little bit, where maybe it's down to the players. But I think for your first game, the fans will do the job.
I'm hoping and expecting so, because of course, if you come here, people talk a lot about the fans and how special it is. So really looking forward to it. I said it in my press conference. If I looked at the Ipswich fans, how loud they were with 30,000, then with us having 60, it's a big challenge to be even louder than them. So let's hope that will work out. But again, then we need to show up from the start on Sunday as well, better than we did the first half against Ipswich.
So it's Brentford on Sunday. They're a team who have been in the Premier League now a few seasons, came into the Premier League with maybe a direct style of play, maybe evolved slightly in the last few years. What do you see as the strengths or maybe weaknesses or problems they can give you?
I think one of the strengths they have is that they work for a long time together with the same manager, so they can play different systems, which is something that's really hard, because before you get one system in really well, that takes you a lot of time. So only managers that are there for a long time working with a team can play different systems. This is what they did in last week against Crystal Palace as well. So it's always a bit more difficult to prepare your team if you can expect, if you might face two different systems. But apart from that, I think I haven't seen them play 4 or 5 years ago, but what I see now is that they play real good football, a good idea, a very good structure, good combinations. So what I mean with that is, if the right fullback has the ball, the striker knows when to show himself. So connection, that's the word I wanted to find. Connections are really good, and I think that's what you see if a team plays longer together, especially with the same manager, and that's what happens there. So winning against Crystal Palace, who had such a strong end of the season, is a very good result for them to start with.
Well, Thomas Frank, the manager, he joined us on the Monday Night Football last season, and he told us that, he gave us a bit of insight that normally when they play away from home against one of the big teams, they play a back three. So I'm trying to give you that little bit of nugget of advice. And
they've told me already. But,
well, Arne, thank you for inviting me in, and I want to wish you all the best, and hopefully it goes well, not just on Sunday, but in all your time at Liverpool.